From our studios around the world, this is the Taste of Place podcast. Every month, we bring you stories from the keepers of culinary culture and heritage to inspire you on both your journey in your career or on your next trip. I'm your host, Eric Wolf. Thanks for listening. Welcome to episode 74 of the Taste of Place podcast. Today, we will be speaking with Christy Davis. Christy is the executive director of the Arizona Urban Agriculture Foundation, bringing over 20 years of experience in the agriculture industry. Raised on a guest ranch in southern Arizona and the southwestern United States, she has a deep-rooted passion for sharing the Western way of life and educating others about the vital role of agriculture in our communities. Christy's dedication to fostering sustainable practices and promoting urban agriculture reflects her commitment to enhancing food systems and empowering individuals through knowledge and resources. Here's our conversation with Christy. Christy, it is so nice to finally meet you. I've heard so many wonderful things about you.
Thank you, Eric. It's nice to finally meet you as well. I'm excited to be here today and talk about Arizona agriculture.
Well, I have got to ask you to explain Arizona agriculture to our listeners because I've been to Arizona a lot of times and I know that there's agriculture, but sometimes people think it's the hottest state in the United States. There, it's a desert. The summers are 120 degrees Fahrenheit or 55 Celsius. There's no possible way that any agriculture could grow there, but you and I know differently. And I happen to know about Queen Creek peaches, which are outstanding. Mm-hmm. There's a thriving wine industry in the south of the state. So could you just help our listeners get their heads around how Arizona can have agriculture?
Yeah, Arizona has a wide variety of agriculture. Every part of the state has something growing in it, whether that's the cattle industry, the dairy industry, or all the fruits and veggies that we grow here in the state of Arizona. It's a $31.9 billion industry in this state. And that just amazes me and amazes the people that come into the state because they think Arizona is just rocks and cactus. And if you drive, we're in the Phoenix Valley, but you can drive just a few hours away and be in a completely different ecosystem. And Arizona is very well known for kind of the Mediterranean diet. You could actually eat 365 days a year just on the products that we grow here in our beautiful state.
So how much of that is exported then?
There is quite a bit exported. Yuma is the lettuce capital during the winter months. So from November until February, if you're eating a salad in another part of the country, say New York City, you're probably eating lettuce that is grown in Yuma, Arizona. So a lot of it stays within the continental United States, but then our wheat here in Arizona, we're very well known for our durum wheat. And a lot of that gets exported out to Italy to become pasta because they love the wheat that's grown here because it's very dry. And in order to make good pasta, you have to have dry wheat. And so that's, kind of one of the very unknowns that we grow a lot of the wheat that Italy loves to create their pasta.
Now that is mind-blowing because a couple episodes ago we had one pizza maker after another and we were talking about their use of the Italian flours, and I think one was in Colorado and the other one was in Alabama, and the Colorado woman uses American wheat and the guy in Alabama uses Italian wheat, and they're both staunch supporters of their own wheat preferences. So
interesting.
I know that Europeans are very anti-GMO and anti-pesticides and all that. Mm-hmm. How is it that they have accepted Arizona wheat?
I know that genetically the durum wheat is a very, very much kind of a heritage. There's not a lot of genetic modification that goes on with the durum wheat. And then as far as the pesticides go, growing it in this dry climate, I'm not sure how much of the pesticides would grow on that, or if it's anything that is in the realm of their, the substance that they don't care for. I just know that there's a ton of it that gets exported out to other countries for the pasta. And a lot stays here in the United States as well. We have a pasta factory here in the Phoenix Valley that makes the pasta. And I try to stick to that brand because I know that it is good wheat that they use. And I know that it is a locally grown pasta, even though it has a national label on it. It comes from my backyard.
That is mind-blowing. I would love to try that because normally, I don't know, it seems to me that American pastas tend to be a little, there's just something that they don't cook as well as the Italian ones, I guess.
Mm,
I don't know. I guess it's a
hmm.
personal preference, but this wheat that you're describing sounds actually really special.
It is. And we even have a farmer down there that I know very well. He's a good friend of mine. And they even do kosher wheat. So they have the rabbi come out and bless the wheat fields so that they can say that it is truly kosher wheat. So the
Wow.
farmers are doing a lot of different things to make sure that the wheat that they grow or the products that they grow can benefit not just one type of demographic, but all demographics.
Outstanding. Now you're located in Gilbert, which is in the
Mhm.
Phoenix metro area, right?
Yes, that is correct. Yeah, we're in what we call the East Valley here in Phoenix.
Okay. And not far from Queen Creek, I think. Is that right?
No, we're about a half hour, 20 minutes from Queen Creek on a good day. The traffic gets a little crazy going down into that area, but it's just down the street.
Yeah, Phoenix traffic is not fun anymore, is it?
No, it's very much resembles LA traffic. It used to be that you didn't get on the roads, in the morning for rush hour, in the afternoon for rush hour, but anymore it seems to be all day long you can run into heavy traffic.
Yeah, yeah. Well, tell us about the farm that you work on and also how you got into the whole agricultural scene.
Yes, so I work at the Arizona Urban Agriculture Foundation here at Agritopia Farms. And as we were talking, the Phoenix area has grown so much. And this farm was homesteaded in 1927 by the Reber family. And when they homesteaded this area, it was creosote and desert. So there wasn't much for farming here in the Phoenix Valley. If you look back into Arizona's history, that is because there wasn't much for water. The farmers actually, the Salt River Project, what we call it today, the farmers actually were a big part of bringing water into this area, making it possible for us to farm the entire Phoenix Valley, actually. So in 1927, when the Rebers came out here, there was just desert. And the house that my office is in, that house that I'm sitting in today, is actually the original 1927 farmstead house. And a lot of the buildings here on the farm that we've repurposed were buildings that were built as the farm grew through from 1927 until 1960, when the Johnstons moved here, Jim and Virginia, and they moved from Ohio. And they have a really wonderful history, rich history as well, but in engineering rather than farming. And Joe Johnston's great grandfather, Herbert, was a founder of Hobart Manufacturing Company. And those that might be listening today, Hobart is the original company that made KitchenAid. So if you have a KitchenAid mixer, you have a connection to Agritopia Farms and the Johnston family, because Hobart was the creator of the KitchenAid. So to me, that's mind blowing that someone here in the Gilbert area has that connection with such a magnificent culinary machine that we all probably have in our homes, as well as 120 different patents that we use in our homes today. The washing machine, the meat slicer, the coffee grinder, all of those things were created by Herbert Johnston, who is Joe Johnston's great grandfather. Now, Joe was a young boy when he moved here to the farm, and they looked at this little farmhouse and decided that they didn't want to, raise 3 boys in this very small farmhouse. So they built their own home here, which is now Joe's Farm Grill, which is very well known for its delicious food. It has been visited by folks like Guy Fieri, and he loves coming out here to the farm. But that is where the farm was in the 1960s. And then in the early 2000s, Johnstons knew that there was a new freeway coming into this area, and there was going to be a lot of growth coming in. And so they took destiny into their own hands and decided to create this community, which is Agritopia. And it's very well known in the Phoenix Valley. Everybody, you say, oh, I work at Agritopia, and they usually know what that is. And so we're the original agri-hood. We have our agriculture in the middle of the village, unlike what they used to have in the old days, which was, the village that was surrounded by the farm. Now we have the farm surrounded by the village. And it's a very walkable community. It's a very family friendly community. The houses out here are like nothing that you see in the Phoenix area. And the 11 acres that we farm, so we have 7 acres of orchard, as well as 3 acres of row crops and 1 acre of community garden. That acreage is in a trust. so that it will stay in agriculture in perpetuity. So we will always have Agritopia Farms here at Agritopia.
Excellent.
So
That's a fantastic story.
yeah, it's an amazing story. It's an amazing heritage, and it really keeps the agricultural heritage that grew Gilbert in the old days as part of the story still today. We do teach our farmhands program, which is for school children. So we have K through 12th grade programs. We have Miss Hickory, who is our teacher. They bring kids out. They learn where their food comes from. They learn how to grow seasonally here in Arizona. And one of the funny stories that she has is that she had a child that thought that carrots grew on trees. And so she got to show him that carrots don't grow on trees. They actually grow in the ground. And then she taught him too that carrots, those of you that maybe you pick the carrots out of your salad, I don't know why you would do that. But if you do pick the carrots out of your salad, think about the next time you do that, because it takes 6 months to grow that carrot, 120 days to grow a stinking carrot, and you just threw it out of your salad. So, the hard work and the blood, sweat, and tears that goes into growing those veggies, eat your veggies. They're good for you and they taste delicious. But that's one of the programs that we have. 6 months to grow a carrot.
That's a long time.
Yeah.
Good thing I like carrots. Otherwise, I'd be on your blacklist.
That's right. That's right. I would say, you know what? Think twice when you throw that carrot out. That, lettuce is a little easier. It doesn't take nearly as long, but those carrots, they take a little while to get going.
And how did you find your way to Agritopia?
So I was raised in the agricultural industry. I was raised in agritourism before agritourism was actually a thing. So in the early 90s, my grandfather, who was a retired pilot for United Airlines, he decided he wanted to have a ranch and he wanted to have a guest ranch. And my dad, who had a degree from UNLV in hotel restaurant management, was the one to go and manage the ranch for him. He looked at ranches all over the United States and landed in a little town in southern Arizona called Sassabee. And we used to have t-shirts that would say, "Where the hell is Sassabee?" Because not everybody knew where Sassabee was, but it's located about 72 miles southwest of Tucson, right on the Mexican border. It's a little bitty town, and my family populated a lot of it. I think there was probably only about 25 people that lived in town, and it was a great way to grow up. We had guests from all over the world that would come and stay with us, and we got to show them what agriculture was, what the Western way of life was, how to be a cowboy, and really keep that heritage of Southern Arizona going. And we had many people that would come back year after year. And it was a great way to grow up and learn how to speak to people about and become passionate about agriculture and the Western way of life. And so growing up, that was instilled in me, and I wanted to go into agriculture, and I did. I have a degree in animal science from the University of Arizona, which brought me here to the Phoenix Valley when I graduated from college. I'd worked in the dairy industry for a couple of years, and then I found my way to the Arizona Farm Bureau. And that's why I know so much about Arizona agriculture, is I was with them for 13 years. And then I was presented with the opportunity to come over here and help the foundation grow and to talk to people about, again, where your food comes from and why it's important for us to keep urban agriculture in the spotlight and to make sure that we maintain some urban agriculture, because we are growing here in the state of Arizona. And if we don't maintain some of it, we're going to lose all of it.
I wanted to talk to you about that because having grown up in agritourism, where you were showing people the Western way of life, which I totally understand what you mean. My mom was from the West, and we took a lot of trips out to Colorado, New Mexico, and Arizona. So I totally get the Western mentality, and it is very special. And I can see why people would want to come and experience that. But as more and more people came to the Phoenix area, which is now, the fifth largest city in the U.S. or something? Or
yes,
it's massive.
It's crazy.
And how are you, that must be, you've got trying to preserve the agriculture, the history, the heritage, all of that. At the same time, you have this tremendous urban growth. How is that working? Because I think that would be a very difficult thing to balance.
It is. It's not easy, but I think that educating people on not how easy it is, but how we can maintain these urban spots within the city and giving people that agricultural touch point, because Americans are 5 generations removed from the farm or ranch. And so bringing those children in and showing them where vegetables actually come from, they don't just appear in the store, gives those parents that connection too, because those kids go home. So one of the activities that Miss Hickory does is this time of year is she creates a finishing salt with the children. So she has some citrus peel, some orange peel, and she takes it, puts it into a food processor with the salt, and she mixes it all up and sends them home with a little tin of this finishing salt that they made here on the farm. And those children are so excited to take that home to their mom and dad. And then their mom and dad say, oh, wow, where did this come from? Oh, wow, there's a farm that's right here in our neighborhood. And it really gives people that satisfaction of, if I buy a farm box from Agritopia Farms, I'm, number one, supporting that local farm. But number two, I'm getting the freshest produce that I can possibly buy. We harvest that produce, and that produce goes out 3 days later, 2 days later. And I think that showing people that you can grow and get that produce from your local neighborhood farm is very important. We're so programmed to go to the store and get the same produce every time. We grow some of the coolest different produce. And I always tell people, I'm like, when you have a small farm like this, you can do those things. You can feed the market with okra. You can feed the market with fairy tale eggplants. You can feed the market with delicious tomatoes that come straight out of the field. And so showing people that kind of gives them that opportunity. We are also showing developers how to better use the green space that is in their communities. They can have a community garden that people can come to and get that fresh produce. They can use that water in a different way to make sure that their communities also have an agricultural touch point. So there's a lot of different channels and ways that we can show people that urban agriculture is important. We know conventionally grown crops are still very important to feed the world, right? But we also know that it is possible to grow things that people can enjoy within a mile or two from their homes.
Understanding the role and impact of local agriculture is often underestimated, and I think we all saw what happened during the pandemic when we were forced to buy locally. And all of a sudden, you were not allowed to go to the big supermarket. You had to source what you could or something that could be delivered. Were you at Agritopia during the pandemic?
I was not. I was at the Arizona Farm Bureau, and it's funny because we had the farmers that were growing conventionally tons of produce, right? Because it was in those months where we were growing lots of lettuce, growing lots of citrus, and trying to find that more local channel for them through the different restaurants and through the different markets. And so I wasn't here, but I did hear the stories of how that impacted us. And it actually opened up a channel for us and for other small farms to work with the USDA to get that produce to the food pantries and to make sure that that food is available to those who need, at the food banks that need that fresh produce. So even after COVID, they continued that programming, and we participate in that programming. 100 of our food boxes a week go to the food bank that then distributes it throughout the state of Arizona to those who need. So it's not just canned food that they're getting, it's actually fresh produce that they're getting into their refrigerators as well. So
and minerals. That's great.
With all the vitamins and minerals. And so that's one of the things that, even though COVID was a very dark time, there was things that we learned, and there was ways that we figured out how to benefit more than just the grocery stores. We're benefiting the small farmers. We're benefiting those in need.
Yeah, you're right. Even though it was a dark time, I've heard so many stories from all around the world of people who have rediscovered their local resources. I hear a lot of stories out
Mhm.
of the UK where people didn't, they had heard there was a farm next to where their house was, and they had no reason to visit it before because they were always going to the big
Mhm.
grocery stores. But all of a sudden, then they learned the farm made cheese and the farm had honey and the farm made ice
Mhm.
cream. And all of a
Mhm.
sudden, all of these wonders are open up to you. And there are
Mhm.
some countries where people, that's how it is. I mean, you go to the local market to buy your produce, but not in every country. And I think a lot of people learn some really
Mhm.
important lessons during that time.
I do agree. We have a great farmers market here in Gilbert. It's one of the biggest in the state, and we participate at that market every weekend. We take all of the produce from the farm down there. We also have a farm store here on property, and we have a subscription box. And of course, it's ebbs and flows because sometimes people, really love what's in the farm box. Sometimes people don't love what's in their farm box. During the summertime, if you don't like eggplants, zucchinis, and tomatoes, you're not going to like the farm box because that's what's locally grown here at Agritopia Farms. But if you do like the winter months where we have so many different, I just give you a little rundown of what's growing out in the fields today. We have four different types of lettuce. We have a romaine lettuce. We have head lettuce. We have the bagged lettuce. We have spinach, Napa cabbage, regular cabbage, radishes, turnips, carrots, onions. What was the other? Fennel. We have so many things growing out there on the farm this time of year. And then it turns to that summertime where it's not as prolific. We don't have as many things happening out there, but there still are things. Somebody asked me, I had a tour last week and they said, you couldn't possibly grow 365 days a year. And I said, oh, yes, you can. You just need to know what to grow during those warm summer months. And my head farmer, Kelly, she's amazing. She's been farming this urban spread not this spread, but she's been farming in the urban environment for 20 years. And she has it nailed down exactly when to plant, what to plant, and how to plant. And even so far as she tells her crew that they better be in a good mood when they're planting, because the plants feel that. And so they'll have music going out there and they'll just be having a great time putting all those veggies into the ground. And it must work because we are really successful. We do a great job of getting food to the markets for sure.
Excellent. No, I agree with that. And that's, I think, where the science in agriculture comes into it, to know what to grow, when to grow. We've
Mhm.
tried growing different things in Spain, and we've talked to the locals and see about what we can grow. But I don't know, it seems like we have an issue with the UV light or something. It's really, really bright here, and
Mm.
things seem to just
Mm.
burn before they do anything. And even if you try to put shades up to protect them from the sunlight, things are not growing really well in our area.
Mm.
So,
Mm.
yeah, I don't know
That's
why
that's
that is.
unfortunate. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm sure it has something to do with, yeah, like you said, it's more UV light or growing closer to the equator. I'm not sure. I know that we have a ton of sunshine, but maybe it's the different parts of the soil as well. We've got some great soil. It's really wonderful that this was once a farm and is staying a farm because that soil is regenerated. And we do so much to make sure that our soil health, so here at Agritopia, we are certified organic. We do not, everything is done by hand. So we plant by hand, we weed by hand, and we harvest by hand. And it is a lot of work. I have 6 full-time people that work the farm, and it's amazing what they get done because there's a lot of weeds that take over
Hmm.
when you plant, and you're not using any there's no pesticides, no herbicides, nothing is used except for your hand to get rid of those weeds. And it is a backbreaking job for sure. And I commend them every day. I make sure that they know how much they're appreciated and all the good that they're doing with bringing these fresh fruits and vegetables to the table.
It is really hard work, and I'm surprised that you only have 6 people doing that, because that doesn't sound like enough.
Sometimes, especially this time of year, it's not enough. We have so much coming out of the fields, and to take it out of the fields and then to take it in to process it, to put it into the farm boxes or to put it in the bags for the wholesale to go to the restaurants or the schools. It takes a lot. They are tired by the end of the day for sure.
Yeah. Well, what's next in agriculture, either in the United States or in the world? Because you hear so many horror stories about the GMO crops and weird things that people are doing to the weather and so on. Do you have any predictions about agriculture in your area or in the world?
I think, well, here in Arizona, our biggest thing is water, and we're fighting for that water for agriculture. There's so many things that are grown that are dependent on the Colorado River water and the negotiations that are going on there. It's been a problem for a long time, and it continues to be. So I think that the future of agriculture here in Arizona is dependent on the politics, honestly. And I think that's the same with anywhere in the United States or the world, is the politics. And I think that we need to make sure that we're looking at the science of all of it, whether it's the science of the GMOs, whether it's the science of the pesticides, herbicides that we're using, and to make sure that we are understanding that science and we're not just pushing it off the table and allowing fear to take over either. I'm big on making sure that scientifically we are looking into every little bit of it and believing what we are seeing, what we're reading, and what educating yourself on what goes into growing that food and what goes into getting that food to the table. And, it's funny working here on the small farm. It's, you have that misfit foods where you see the different, foods that the consumer maybe pushes off to the side. Here at the farm, that food goes into the box and you get the farm box, and it's usually the most beautiful fresh food that you can find. But we need to make sure that we're not just judging our food when we walk through the grocery store either. Okay, well, I want my lettuce to be the same every time, no matter what. As you're growing it and as you're putting it on your table, just remember that lettuce is lettuce. And unless it really looks terrible, it's still going to be delicious and nutritious for you. So, and as far as the industry and agriculture is concerned, we need to make sure that we, in the United States especially, food security is national security. Let's make sure that we're continuing to grow the products that we need for ourselves and not be dependent on other countries to grow that food.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I know that, well, depending on what continent you're referring to, but the UN has published quite a bit of data about the amount of food waste in the world, and usually it's in the 30 to 40% range. So 30 to 40% of food that's harvested or grown or manufactured is just thrown away. And that just boggles my mind when you think about
That's
the amount of
crazy.
effort, the amount of time that is spent to
Yeah.
grow and harvest food, then all of the raw materials, like you said, the water, fertilizers, all of that. It's just, almost half, a third to a half of all food is wasted. I'm speechless.
It's crazy to have that fact. And, you wonder, first world problems, as they say. We're sometimes too picky about what our food looks like and not realizing that it's still going to taste good. It's still going to be good for your body. And we got to stop the waste. The fact that here on the farm, we have very little that goes to waste makes me very happy. That's left in the field, if we go through a whole season and there's still some in the field, or there's some in the field that we didn't get to before it was too far gone, like some of the cauliflower, when we're done with that part of the field, that all gets tilled into the soil and helps to put those nutrients back into that soil for the next generation of crops that go in. We do a lot of crop rotation, and we make sure that what we're doing is sustainable for our soil and the food that we grow in that field. So we make sure that we're not throwing a ton of waste. I have never seen us throw a ton of vegetables out. We do work with another farm that does create compost, and we'll send whatever we have as waste to them. Everything's in a cycle, we make sure that we're putting things to work, no matter if it's waste or whether it's being eaten.
I think about, you look at people's behavior at the grocery store, right? And I have seen people put back a squash or something that looks a little odd. They don't really like the way it looks, so they'll put it back. But think about tomatoes, for example. I mean, if you're purchasing salsa, or you're purchasing tomato sauce or Italian sauce, right? They're not using the beautiful tomatoes that you want in the grocery store. They're using all of the ugly fruits and vegetables for things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we do our tomato pick, which is in June. There's usually some tomatoes that are left out there that they're not the most beautiful, but there's some ladies that'll come in and they will take those tomatoes and they will take it home and they make some of the best sauces that you can come by. It's great to see people so excited about finding those fruits out there on the vine and making sure that they're, taking everything that they could possibly want, not just the ones that look the most beautiful.
Yeah. Let me ask you, I'm just thinking about people, especially people who live in urban environments who are busy and they eat out a lot and don't really have a lot of time, but people are increasingly interested in sustainable agriculture. Is there something that people could grow at home in the city that, I don't know if it's an herb or something that can kind of be their first step into agricultural success?
So whenever I do a tour and people are like, oh, I want to grow something at home. What can I grow at home? I always say to them, especially if it's wintertime, the easiest things to grow in Arizona are lettuce and radishes. And I say that only because for my own example, I have a decently green thumb. It's kind of yellowish, but I've grown radishes, I've grown lettuce, and at one time, I let the lettuce go to seed, which was the worst thing ever. I discovered the next year because those seeds blew around the yard and I had rogue lettuce everywhere in our yard. And I'm like, well, it's free range lettuce apparently. And so I tell people, I'm like, if you want to grow something that, you can go outside and you can pick it and you can plant it again and grow some more, lettuce and radishes are the two things that I think are the easiest to grow. And a lot of people, you like lettuce. A lot of people like radishes. So it's not like somebody's going to turn their nose up at it because it's a turnip or it takes forever like an artichoke. As far as herbs go, plant a rosemary bush and you'll have rosemary all the time. And they're pretty darn easy to maintain and to harvest. And then you have fresh rosemary to cook with your chicken or your turkey or your prime rib, whatever you're cooking, you can throw it right in there and it makes it delicious. Even in your cocktail. We did a cocktail hour out here for Valentine's Day and one of the garnishes was rosemary right here from the farm. So, there's all sorts of way to use those herbs if you want to do herbs in your kitchen or outside in a pot. Whichever way you want to do it.
Even though we haven't had great success growing crops per se, we have had really good success growing herbs. So in addition to the rosemary, mint is super easy. That's just prolific. In fact, it's hard to stop.
Yes.
Basil as well is really easy. And then we also have a little mini basil where the leaves are just these little tiny things. And it imparts the basil flavor without the full basil leaf. And lemongrass has been really easy to grow here for some strange reason.
Sure. We do a lot of basil in the summertime. Basil loves the heat of our Arizona summer. So I could see where that would be good in Spain. We do 3 different types of basil. We do a regular Italian basil, a Thai basil, and have you ever smelled lemon basil or tasted lemon basil? It is one of my favorites. And anytime I do a tour during that time of the year, I go out and I grab all 3 different flavors. I call them flavors, all varieties. And I show people and I let them taste and smell each one of them. And all the women are like, oh my gosh, I want my house to smell like lemon basil now. I need to find where I can find this lemon basil. And I'm like, well, for the next couple of months, you can find it right here at Agritopia Farms. But after that, you'll have to find a different location because it's only here for the summertime.
Yeah. And you know what? Not only are those herbs easy to grow, but drying them and then breaking them up and putting them in jars to keep for the year. I mean, it is nothing more satisfying than adding your own oregano or your own basil to a spaghetti sauce.
Yes,
the flavors
absolutely.
are so much more intense, and you grow it. You know that there's no pesticides on it. It's just super easy to do. I don't know. We enjoy that.
Yes, that's kind of that you just reminded me of are the joys of in Arizona with our citrus. So I have a lemon tree at home and every year I juice the lemon juice into cubes or into water bottles so that I can have fresh lemon juice for lemonade or for cooking. And I'm spoiled. I'm going to admit it. I love walking outside, grabbing a lemon straight off the tree in the wintertime and having that to cook with. It's like nothing else. It's delicious and it's local. It's right there on my tree.
We have a couple of lemon bushes as well as some citrus, but unfortunately our citrus is not happy this year because of all the floods we had in the fall.
Oh, no, it's amazing how intolerant citruses to too much water.
Yeah, I would say we had maybe only about 20% of our orange harvest that we had last year.
Oh
And
dear.
apparently, and last summer was so hot that we live in a one got about 5% of the harvest of the previous year, last year because
Oh
of the heat.
wow.
Yeah. And then we had a wet fall,
Wow.
and it's just it's a hard time to be a farmer or to do agriculture.
Yeah, so we have 7 acres of orchard. The majority of that is varieties of citrus. We have 9 different varieties of citrus in our orchard, and we have peaches and apples and dates. We have some of the best medjool dates in the world here at Agritopia Farms. But we just finished citrus season, and we did 2 U picks, one the end of December and one the middle of January, and that was people coming in with their families and picking citrus, and they picked 7,500 pounds of citrus out of our orchard. That was just them picking it. That didn't even count the orders of citrus that went to the local breweries or the local restaurants here in the valley. Our citrus did really well this year, and it does very well. It's a very established old orchard, and so it does well year after year, and people love coming out to the orchard. Our next U pick will be our peaches, and right now they're in bloom, and it is a pink forest out there. It is the most enchanting environment, and it's something that just draws everybody to it every year.
Well, I have had peaches from your area, and they are absolutely amazing. And also, I've had Colorado peaches, which were also excellent. And having grown up
Mm-hmm.
in Georgia, which is the home of peaches, to be able that's saying something. You guys do
Yeah.
really good
Well,
peaches.
thank you. Thank you. I love that time of year because in the orchard you'll have the peaches and then you'll have the blackberry bushes going crazy at the same time, and you can just act like a bear out there and just continue to forage and fill.
Nice, nice. Well, Christy, we need to wrap up, but I wanted to thank you
Yes.
walking me down a little bit through memory lane of my time in Arizona, but also helping people to understand what's possible, especially when maybe a preconceived notion is that the climate's not necessarily hospitable. And I think you've shown people that where there is a will, there is a way.
That's right. And if you have questions, come on out to Agritopia. I love showing people the farm and showing people what agriculture is here in Arizona.
Well, we'll certainly put the links below in the description for people to come and check it out.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you, Christy. That's it for this episode of the Taste of Place podcast. This episode is brought to you by the World Food Travel Association and its Culinary Capital Certification Program for destinations. We'd like to hear from you. We invite you to share your ideas, questions, and thoughts about the podcast by emailing us at help@worldfoodtravel.org. Or you can connect with us and comment about the episode on major social media platforms. Special thanks to our guest, Christy Davis, and our sincerest thanks to you for joining us. I'm Eric Wolf, wishing you a safe, happy, and productive month ahead.